Welcome, Reuven and Ina.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello. Let me see. Sophia Tamarkin, welcome aboard. Goldsteins, welcome, Florida.
Hello, Rabbi.
Love the view.
Well, it's not the greatest tonight, but it's all we got.
It's whatever Hashem gives us is beautiful.
Right. Thousands of birds today for some reason.
Oh, that's beautiful. There you go.
We don't have such a view in Newtown.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank God. Listen.
The Torah says that the worst of Israel is better than the best of Egypt, as far as So some people refer to Miami as Israel, as Jerusalem. I wouldn't. What's that?
It's Southern New York.
Southern New York. Yeah. That would be a better way to describe it than Jerusalem, definitely. But it does have some virtues.
The Goldsteins.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So I'm going to mute everyone if that's okay. There we go. And so just briefly before I share some thoughts, really, I just want to share a story today primarily. But so Heather should have, I have not confirmed this today, but she had a week of heavy chemo to knock out her cells in her body, so that today they'd be able to give her the cells of her donor. And then her body goes through the process of hopefully multiplying those cells. I should say her body will go through the process of multiplying those cells. Her body is going to fight the new cells, and the fighting itself is a good thing because it strengthens the new cells as they fight back and take over. And that will become her new, I don't know the medical terms, but that'll become her new makeup. During the next 2 weeks, it affects her very severely. Typically, hopefully it will not affect her too severely, but with all different types of sores as the body's dealing with the transition. We think of her, we daven for her, we study the gate of trust for her in her merit, and may God give her a very easy journey as she gets to good, solid health, health that will always remain good and never should she have to deal with this again. That's the general update from what she explained to me of how this process works. And God willing, in a month or so, she'll be able to go home. But of course, when she goes home, she's going to have to be very, very careful with making sure that she's not exposed to anything, because she's more prone to infections as her body's still building up a new immune system. So that's the report. She's going through a lot right now because she just went through a week of heavy chemo, and now the first 2 weeks, and probably even more than that, are very, very unbelievably challenging. You have to have a fight within you. She has a fight within her. She's unbelievable. But just for us to understand that she's really going through something that's very likely more intense than any of us can relate to. God should alleviate it to make it easier, and it should be all with tremendous success, and should be restored to good health. That's the bottom line and the main thing. So chapter 47 every single day. Everyone, please make sure that you don't miss a single day of saying it. And we have 18 videos of the Gate of Trust that are up. You're not going to see all of them on YouTube yet because they're being let out one day at a time. But actually next week, I will send out a link to my website where I'm putting them all up. You'll have them all on one page. There'll be about 21 or 22 videos. The average class length is about 30 minutes. You can listen to it. You don't have to watch it. It's just me talking. So it's just the audio is really the content. So you can do it while you're doing other things. It's transformative. The teachings of the Gate of Trust are unbelievable. And I mean, It's a shame I didn't learn it earlier in life. I mean, I've learned many of the concepts here and there, but all of it together is really powerful and really can change the space that we live in every single day. And it's just we must do this for ourselves and also do this to be powerful Jews, powerfully connected to God, living in a reality, not in fear, especially nowadays. Really, really important stuff. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to be reading, firstly, L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim to an inspired, blessed Shabbos Ayaya Nason. I remember now. I didn't want you to hold that for too long. So it's an inspired, blessed Shabbos. We need to, what I'll say this just as an intro. One of the gifts that we have, I may have said this in the past, one of the gifts that we have now in this time where we are somewhat isolated, to whatever extent it is, even if we do go to shul or don't go to shul, but we're definitely more, we have less interaction with people than we used to, is that it boils down to us to discover our own inspiration. I actually just had a conversation with someone, and there's a period of life, and some of you, maybe most of us, and maybe hopefully all of us can relate to what I'm going to say, and that is that we go through life very often hoping that someone has the answer for us. Well, we even hire people to give us the answers, to show us the way. And there's a certain point where we realize that while we do need experts in fields that we have no connection with, but generally in our lives, it is only when we are willing to stop relying on everyone else, but actually take full responsibility and ownership for our own life and look at ourselves and stop saying someone else has the answer, but start realizing that the answer we have. We just need to discover that. And that is very, very transformative. That is a gift. That's a liberation. And so the opportunity of being isolated is that it gives us the opportunity to stop relying on other people to have the experiences that we have, that we look within ourselves and say, how can I give myself this experience? I really don't need someone else to give me this experience. I can have it myself. My Shabbos can be a beautiful Shabbos if I find the meaning from within myself. We call it in Newtown, beginning within, or at least on State Street. It's that, and it's truly, that is a tremendous gift. So my blessing to all of us, beginning with myself, or with all of us together at the same time, is that we should find everything that we're looking for within ourselves more and more, especially during this time, and use this time for that opportunity. L'chaim. Okay, so tomorrow when we read the Torah, we're going to read the double portion, long Torah portion, and we're going to conclude the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, and the last Torah portion is Maseh. Maseh means journeys. And there's a well-known and often repeated teaching from the Baal Shem Tov that the 42 journeys that the Jewish people went on, they had 42 stops from when they left Egypt until they got to the land of Israel. That those 42 stops really are also, in addition to it being their actual physical experience, it's also a metaphor for every one of our lives, which is a journey. Life is a journey. And as we know, in their journeys, they had high points and low points. Everyone's life has high points and low points. And that is what makes up the journey that we have. And very often we can't get to the high point without having the low point. Because without having the experience of the low point, we cannot reach that height. Very similar to a roller coaster. As we say, life is a roller coaster. It's very similar to that. The actual descent gives us, propels us, gives us the energy to go higher. That's a very important point to realize as we find ourselves in difficult situations. We have to see what the potential behind the challenging time is. And we have to remind ourselves of that during the challenge. And we have the ability to do that. It's a frame of mind. that we sort of live in. And then when we live in that, when we find ourselves the roller coaster going down, we understand that there's something that we can discover. Just like I mentioned before, where maybe we're isolated, but there's something now I can discover within myself, which I wasn't willing to discover because I was able to lean on getting it elsewhere in a very shallow way. So I just read a story that just happened. Fascinating. In China, China's the hotspot today. I'm not making any comments. I'm just saying that China's in the news every single day, amongst many other characters. So, but this is a story I suspect was not in the news, and that is that on Shavuos this year was Friday and Shabbos, if I remember correctly. So Shavuos ended Saturday night. Saturday night, actually, when we had a minyan, some of you are here, are with us right now. We had a minyan, 10 men that drove to the Rebbe's Oil on a Saturday night about, 3-4 months ago to daven on behalf of Heather. So we drove after Shabbos, we got there late, and who did we bump into then? And I think some of you should remember, I introduced him to you. We bumped into the Chabad Shliach from Shanghai. And the virus then was just their problem. So I spoke to him about it a little bit, and I introduced him to the group, just for a moment. So this must have been February, I guess, and we started getting in touch with what was going on, I think, more deeply in March. I don't know, maybe my dates are off. I'm seeing some reaction, but whatever it is. So anyway, he got a call right after Shavuos was over from a woman in Israel. A woman who emigrated to Israel from Europe. She said that she called and she said, I have an uncle who lives 30 minutes away from Shanghai. He passed away a week ago, and I'm calling you to assist with getting his body to Israel so he can be buried. Because Chinese law is that every person that dies in China is cremated, and they only bury ashes. They don't bury bodies, except for a few Muslims who get special, dispensation, and they can get buried. If someone's a foreigner and they die in China, they get cremated, and then the ashes are not allowed to be buried in China. They're sent back to the country where they are from. So this woman really needed help to get her uncle out of the country to be buried properly. So the Rabbi Greenberg asked the woman, he died a week ago. What took you so long to call me? Right? So she said that he's a music teacher. And what happened was his students came to his house for lessons. They knocked on the door, no one answered. This happened in 1, 2, 3 days. And suddenly they suspected there may be something wrong. So they called the police. The police broke down the door and they found that they found him in the home, unfortunately dead. They didn't know, how to find relatives. So they called Germany because he was from Germany. And till Germany tracked him down and his family and found this niece in Israel, took a week. So she just found out. And she's calling and she's calling now. So he said, you need to speak to the department that deals with the transportation of dead bodies. And you're gonna have to fill out paperwork and you'll be able to arrange it. So he put her in touch with that department. She calls up that department. She finds out that it's going to cost $20,000 in order for her to get her uncle to Israel. So she didn't have the money. It wasn't even a question. So she calls back Rabbi Greenberg and says, never mind. So he says, what happened? He says, we don't have a choice. He's going to have to be cremated because it's $20,000. So Rabbi Greenberg says he's going to be, what do you mean he's going to be cremated? You can't let him be cremated. It's against Jewish law to have him cremated. And we know that the body, as long as the body exists, it has not fully decomposed, the body still has an element of life in it. By the mere fact that it exists means it has some life in it. And that's the reason why, and the soul has a connection with the body, which is the reason why we go to a grave, because there is an element of the soul that remains connected with the grave where the body is buried. And because of this, when a body is cremated, it's actually like burning a living person. It's like burning a person alive. It's no different than what the Nazis did, and in some respect, it's no different than what the Nazis did, right? But the key point also is that we see a body as entirely dead. A body is not entirely dead. So it's very painful for the body, very painful for the soul. It's terrible. You can't do this. So imagine this woman, she doesn't have money to bury her uncle, and now she has the rabbi telling her that it's the worst thing you can do is actually let your uncle be cremated. So she started crying. It's like, what am I supposed to do? She felt bad. She wanted to bury her uncle, but she didn't know what to do. So of course, the Chabad rabbi has a new job on his plate, which is his blessing to be able to work on getting a Jew a proper burial. And so there, and she had also found out that there are additional issues, which was the coronavirus, that they now, I guess, I don't know, I'm assuming it's still there now, but they have a law now with a virus that you cannot move a body from one city to another, because they don't want the virus, being transferred that way. So they can't even get him out of the city that he's in. So the shliach told her, speak to the German authorities and see if they can use political pressure to get them to permit the moving of of his body, at least, so we can at least get him transferred as a start. And they said they couldn't make any headway. So the rabbi called this department and said, "What's the problem? You worried that he has corona, that he has the virus? Test him. You'll know if he has the virus or not. Because hopefully he didn't. He didn't have the virus, and then you have no issue." They said, "We're not going to test a body that's been dead for 2 weeks." They just didn't want to do it. So what's he supposed to do? So he called Rabbi Tachtel, who's a Chabad rabbi in Germany, who's a well-known Chabad rabbi in Germany, and has some connections in the government. And he contacted and he said, "I have this crisis on my table. Please help me. Who do you know?" He contacted the foreign ministry. They contacted the consulate in Shanghai, and they were able to gain permission to move the uncle. So what did they have to do? The plan was this. They were going to move him, take him on a 21-hour drive to another city. From that city, they put him on a short flight to Beijing. And then from Beijing, they'd get him onto a flight to Israel. That was the plan. So it seemed like it was falling into place. Although, every stop, there was a little bit of a challenge here. So that's what the plan was. Who's going to fund all of this? It's going to cost over $20,000. $20,000 just for the Chinese government. So he sent out on a WhatsApp to a group of the Asian Chabad rabbis, does anyone know anyone that might be interested in funding this? One rabbi responded, there's a Jew in Australia who has a special heart for such a situation. Reach out to him, see what he'll do. He reached out to this person. The person said the expenses are covered. He had $21,000 wired to him immediately to take care of the expenses. So the expenses were covered. Hashem really set that one up easily. That was the easiest part of the whole story. Interestingly, by the way, that's very interesting. I just want to point out the $21,000, the thing that we think sometimes is going to be the biggest problem, was the easiest of the issues. Listen to what happens. So there's already a headache. They don't find out until a week. Every stop, they're not getting any help. Finally, they get to Rabbi Tachtel, the foreign ministry. They were able to get permission to move the body. They drive him 21 hours to this city, which is, I couldn't pronounce the name, so I didn't even write it down. And from that city, he's going to take a small flight they're going to put him onto a small flight to Beijing. When the flight, it was a small plane, because it was just a local flight, so to speak. And you're only allowed to take something which weighs 150 kilos or less. The coffin with the body weighed 170 kilos. Right? So what do? So they had to gain special permission in order to permit the coffin to go on the plane, which they finally got. Then they come to Beijing, El Al will not take the body on the plane without a coronavirus test. Gosh. So what are they going to do? And China is not going to test. So he calls up Rabbi Greenberg, who happens to be Israeli, calls up Zaka. You may be familiar with an organization called Zaka, which deals with burials in Israel. It's an unbelievable organization of tremendous goodness. And they arrange, they speak to Halal and they negotiate and they work out that they'll take the body without the test. But in the meantime, in that negotiation, they missed the flight that was the next flight that was going. And only one flight a week was flying now with the virus. Only one flight a week. So they have to wait another whole week. We're not done yet. The next week comes. They're all ready to put the body on the flight on El Al the next morning. That morning, El Al goes on strike. The employees go on strike. The flight's not going. So it's just unreal, right? So they work through Turkish Airlines to get the body on a Turkish flight to Turkey, and then from Turkey to Israel. And they worked that out, which was an ordeal. They finally worked that out. And finally, they got this Jew to Israel, where he had a proper Jewish burial. We call, whenever there is someone who needs a Jewish burial and they don't have it, this is, by the way, the reason why, I'm sure, the reason why this Jew, whoever he is, I don't know who he is, in Australia, who just dished out $21,000 without hesitation, is because it's called a chesed shalemis. It's the truest form of kindness. The dead person is not paying you back the money, right? They don't even, at least logically, right? I mean, obviously they know, their neshama knows, and I wouldn't be surprised that the person, what neshama does for this person who ensured that they would go to a proper burial, what they do on high on behalf of the person who did it. But all of that is the extra spiritual stuff. But just practically speaking, you're doing kindness to someone, you're getting no feedback. You're getting no feedback. You're doing it purely because you want to do this Jew a favor. You never met him. You don't know who he is. He's never going to thank you for what you did. It's called a chesed shel emes, true kindness. It's true because it's pure. And that's what true is. It's purely for God. It's purely because it's the right thing to do. That's what Rabbi Greenberg did. And I'll tell you, when I was listening to the story, what was I thinking the whole time? The whole time I was thinking, at which point in this story I would have given up. That's what I was thinking. At point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. There may have been more points than that. That's what I was thinking the whole time. When would I have given up? And I hope that in the, when you get into such a story, you don't give up. But it's just unbelievable, the commitment and dedication to persevere against odds, which any reasonable person could say, well, there's nothing you can do. There was nothing you can do. But what we learned from it is there's always something you can do. And because something goes down, doesn't mean it stays down. That's the key. Just because things are not going well doesn't mean it stays not well. Here's the fascinating thing. The fascinating thing is that it took exactly 42 days from when the man passed away till he had a burial. And in our parsha, we read about 42 journeys that the Jewish people went on. Because life, in the very same way, is a journey. And life has its highs and life has its lows. And as I also recently said to someone, it's a shame I didn't know this, whatever this was that I was talking to him about 10 years ago. But then again, I needed to be where I was 10 years ago to know this now. Does that make sense? We have to go through the experiences that we go through to evolve into the people that we become, assuming we're going to permit ourselves to learn those lessons and become that person who we are. So that is the journey. Life is a journey. And we have, and what I always say is, you can't be the father at 30 that you are at 40. You can't be the spouse after 10 years of marriage that we hopefully are after 20 years of marriage. That experience and those downs, we will call them downs instead of mistakes, and whatever it is, we all learn from. And that molds us and develops us into being who we are. We don't have to feel bad about the fact that our life is down, whether it's down because of things we've done, or it's down because of circumstances God has given us. On the contrary, if God has given it to us, then we really know that God is giving us an opportunity here. He's sending us down because he wants us to pick up a treasure and rise up with it. So we go through these journeys and there are challenges, and the challenge cannot stop us, but we have to realize that the challenge is only going to bring out more determination and greater capability than we realized we had. And when we break it down, when we end up breaking down life in all of these journeys, what we need to now, what I need to deal with is what's going on now. And if I can spend the time to focus on what's going on now, then I can get myself to rise up from whatever challenge I may be dealing with. Here's one other important point I just want to stress. We're not only going on a personal journey. These are things that we have to remember all the time. We're not only going on a personal journey. My journey is a continuation of my father's journey, who's a continuation of his father's journey. And it's a continuation of my mother's journey, who is a continuation of her parents' journey. We're part of history, and it continues beyond us, based with the people that we influence, our children and other people that we influence, the spiritual children that we give off in this world. So we're not just living in a moment. Our life is just one moment in many, many moments. This is very, very important as Jews for us to remember, especially during this time of year, because we're in a down time of the 3 weeks. But we have to realize that the whole purpose of the downtime is to bring us up. The entire reason we're in exile. So yes, it's a punishment, which is a word I really don't like. It's a consequence of the things we've done when we had the temple. But it is also, okay, and I'm not taking away the fact that it's a consequence, but it's also a part of God saying, I need you to fall lower so you can come up higher. That's really what's going on now. And the fact of the matter is, we're in that low place. And we can either be in this low place begrudgingly, or we can embrace it by realizing the opportunity. Like I also shared maybe a month or two ago, that the beauty of being in a very dark place is that you can illuminate a very deep darkness. Someone who is not in a dark place cannot bring light to that place, to a very deep darkness. They bring light, but to a place that is not as desperate. And our mission is to illuminate every area of darkness in the world. And we were chosen based on history to be a part of the generation where the darkness is really, really dark, and pervading in ways that I don't think anyone needs to be explained anymore. It's quite clear how dark the world is. And this is part of our role in the historic journey. And when we see it in that perspective, we begin to see where we are and what we're doing with greater significance, and understanding also that even though things may not look good now, we're part of a much bigger picture. And maintaining the hope, but more important than the hope is the trust that Hashem is going to bring us to the illumination that he promised us through his prophets, through our prophets that he gave us. And that illumination, of course, is the revelation of God to the entire universe with the coming of Mashiach. May we experience that before Tisha B'Av, because I don't know about you, but I can't stand Tisha B'Av. Rosie, I just told her, well, I was talking with Rosie, and I don't use the word hate very often, but I told her I hate Tisha B'Av. And it's not because of the spiritual reasons. It's just because I can't stand the fast day for 25 hours and the whole makeup of it with the heat outside and everything. It's just not for me. I don't know about you, but if that's the only reason why I want Mashiach, good enough. But God, the time has come. Thank you, everyone, for jumping on, for spending a few minutes together. You are officially unmuted. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them, or rebuttals, or issues, or questions, or answers, whatever they may be.
Rabbi, thank you very much for sharing this amazing story. And what I was thinking, you mentioned, the